Good morning, Consume Church. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Good. Just want to piggyback on that video. Just a second. For those of you that don't know me, at some point during this, I was going to cry. So, may as well get it out in the beginning. I'm not having a nervous breakdown. Just to let you know that. This is how the Spirit moves me. Just to piggyback on that video, if you are active service, I'm going to include active service also, or a veteran, would you please stand? And Consume Church just wants to say thank you. You may be seated. Those of you who don't know me, I'm Monty Powell. I'm one of the pastors here. On behalf of Pastor John Howell and Pastor Jonathan Kitchens, I want to welcome you all here. Let me tell you a little bit about me, because I see some of you out there that I don't know very well. So you probably don't know me very well either. Like I said, I am Monty Powell, one of the pastors here. My wife, his name is Kelly. Raise your hand, Kelly. Kelly volunteers in a lot of places in the church. Most of the time you're going to see her in the Connection area or in Kids Center. But she does lots of things here. We've been married 20 years. A little over 20 years. We have two children. Monty the third. Raise your hand, Monty. Monty volunteers in production area. Raise it again. Not everybody else saw it. There you go. Monty runs the slideshow most Sundays. Elizabeth, where's Elizabeth? Oh, there she is. Raise your hand, Elizabeth. Elizabeth volunteers also. She volunteers in the parking lot. Usually when you drive in, she's standing under the tent out at the road. So be careful around the tent. That's all I'm going to say. Okay? That's my daughter. Okay? Kelly and I are not originally from here. We both grew up on the coast of North Carolina. Yeah, North Carolina, yeah. God's country, along with Georgia too. We have lived in Georgia 2 different times since we got married. Right out of college, I got a job up in Rome, Georgia. So we got married, lived there for a little over 8 years. Then we moved to Texas. Yeah, I knew I would get some of that. For about 3.5 years. Then we moved back to Georgia, to Richmond Hill, and we've been here about 11 years. Kelly and I were part of the original group of folks that God called to come alongside John and Shannon when they planted this church. So we have been on this crazy ride from the beginning. Yeah. It's been awesome. It's been interesting. Not looked exactly the way we thought it was going to look a lot of times. So I bet your question is, one of them, how did we get to you preaching this morning, to me preaching this morning? It is a funny story. If you're a regular here, you know that Pastor John does most of the preaching here, has since the beginning. There's only been a couple of sermons that he didn't preach. And to be honest, that was the plan this time. As you know, Pastor John, Pastor Jonathan, and I think 15 others from our church left yesterday morning on a mission trip to Haiti. 7-day mission trip to Haiti. I typically go on that trip. I'm usually on that mission trip. As you know, we usually go in the summer, June, July. This year it was July. Do you guys remember what was going on in July in Haiti? Riots, yeah, right. The U.S. government said nobody could go. So our trip was postponed. We didn't know exactly when. It was rescheduled for November. I couldn't go because of work. Some scheduling conflicts with work, so I couldn't go. Pastor John, talked to an Army chaplain, since it was going to be Veterans Day weekend, about preaching today. And 2 weeks ago, when I left to go on a hunting trip to Missouri, that was the plan, is that Army chaplain was going to preach today. We thought that was a great plan, to be honest. All three of the pastors thought it's a great idea. Veterans Day, Army chaplain, it makes sense, God. Great plan. So I went on my hunting trip with that in mind. While I was on the hunting trip, just a little insight, I'm going to talk about God speaking to me. God doesn't verbally, audibly speak to me. Never has, not one time. What he does is, out of the blue most of the time, he will pop a question into my head. And it's usually totally off topic from what I'm doing, where I'm at, and he just pops a question. So, literally, the first time he did it, I was sitting in a tree stand in Missouri on a deer hunt. And he said, "What about this?" Now, a little background on that. This is a topic, I've been saved a little over 26 years. This is a topic that has fascinated me for most of my Christian life. So I was like, so early on in my Christian walk, I thought about it a lot because I thought it was really important to understand and to be able to explain. But I never could. And I hadn't thought about it for a while. And he said, "What about this?" And I'm like, "What? What are you doing?" I haven't thought about that in probably several years, in any, in depth at all. And so first couple of times it happened, I actually just dismissed it. As, that's not God. It's just popping back up. It's not God. Should have known better. But then it kept happening throughout the trip. And it was about something very specific, which should have been a clue. Just saying, it should have been a clue. But it wasn't. I was a little slow. And honest, I was preoccupied. I was on a hunting trip. What was my goal? My goal was to kill a deer. And in Missouri. And so that went on during the trip. So now let's fast forward. But remember, this is a topic that fascinated me for years and years and years and years. Notice I haven't told you what it is yet. So let's fast forward to last Sunday. Because as far as I knew, the plan was for an Army chaplain to preach today. Okay, last Sunday, after service, I'm at the back as people leave, tell them, "Hey, have a great week, glad you're here," talking, whatever. Most people had left. There were a few people still hanging around, and I saw John sitting on the stage. Sorry. And I had that, I don't know if it was actually that God's urged me, but I had this urging that I need to go talk to John. Which, anybody that knows John and I, that is not uncommon for us to talk. Obviously, we're elders in the church. Jonathan doesn't talk a lot, as much as John and I. I'll put it that way. And so it was not at all uncommon for me and I'd been gone for a week, a little over a week. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go up there and talk to him. So I did. And so we're just talking. Just about elder stuff, pastor stuff, church stuff going on, blah, blah, blah. All of a sudden, John said, "Hey, I need you to sit down. I want to talk to you about something." Should have been another clue, but it wasn't. So in my mind, I was thinking, okay, there's something that's come up in the week I was gone that we need to talk about. Okay, so I sat down. He said, "Hey, the Army chaplain can't preach Sunday." He got my attention. I said, "Okay." He said, "And I'm not sure, but I think God is telling me that you need to preach." So, at that point, he definitely had my attention. And then, but he continued to talk. You know John. John likes to talk. And what he was doing, he would say, I don't know exactly what that looks like for you. He said, it doesn't have to look exactly like what I do. I was like, yeah, okay. And he said, maybe it's just you get up and you close in prayer, or you say a couple of verses. I think he was giving me an out, trying to get me out to not have to preach. And in one of his pauses, I don't remember exactly what I said, but I said something like, yeah, I think I'm supposed to preach too. And I know what the topic is. And we both, sitting right here, just kind of stared at each other for like, I don't know, 5, 10 seconds. I don't know how long it was. We were just kind of staring at each other like, okay. And then we just laughed. We just out loud, we just laughed and we're like, isn't God so funny? He knew he had a plan the whole time for me not to go on the Haiti trip. I wasn't bright enough to figure that out. It took me a lot longer to get on with that plan. But that was the plan the whole time. So that's basically how we got to where we are right now with me preaching. This is not going to look like one of John's sermons, because God gave me a specific way he wanted me to do this, which was comforting to me, because I was thinking it had to look like traditional sermons that I've seen growing up, or John's, or it's not going to look that way. I'm just going to warn you, and it's not going to be 45 minutes, which I don't think probably makes anybody sad. But I'm going to be obedient. It's not what I thought it would look like, and that's okay. It's going to be okay. So I bet I know what your question is now. What is the topic? What is the topic? So, the title of the sermon is, How Big is God? Now, I bet somebody in here is saying, could you pick the broader topic? And the answer to that is twofold. No, absolutely not, and I didn't pick it. That's where we are. Because you can't pick a broader topic than that. So, the next question is, I will bet somebody has this question. What do you mean by big? What's big when it comes to God? Well, I came up with some words, and I'll just go over a few of those. Omnipotent. All-knowing. Infinite. Big word. Forgiveness. Grace, truth, love, patience. Any number of words that you can come up with. I didn't pick any of those, actually. The word I picked is powerful. Because I think it can apply to every one of those. All of those are attributes of God, or descriptions of God, and all of them, when you really get to think about them, are huge and awesome, and a word way bigger than big. Powerful is what I came up with. So basically, that is how we got to where we are right now, with a sermon title, How Big is God? That is, now I bet you're wondering, well, what exactly were the questions that God asked him while he was in Missouri? Because it wasn't how big is God. It wasn't what he asked me. What he kept bringing up to me was creation. The creation story. If you've been in church for more than 15 minutes in your life, everybody has heard the creation story. Right? Everybody. If you've heard the creation story, raise your hand. Yeah. Creation story. In the beginning of the Bible, right at the very beginning, just read like 30 verses. creation story. Here is the really good part and the really scary part for me on this. Several days into preparing for this, I'm an engineer by trade, just so you know. So for those of you that are engineer types, you're going to love this sermon. Some of you may think it's a little wonky, but that's okay. This is where God led me, so that's where I'm going to go. The really good and the really scary part is God took me through a process, which to engineers is really important. Processes are important, which I think is the reason he did it, of teaching me something about this. And then, about 2-3 days into me preparing, I thought I was killing it, to be honest. I thought I had actually come up with a plan that would describe this in a way that people would understand it, that nobody else had ever come up with. No pride at all there. I had to repent of that. God helped me to repent of that, trust me. But once God taught me what he needed to teach me, then he said, you need to present it exactly the way I taught it to you. And, of course, what was my response? Oh, God, that's awesome. Yeah, that's going to be great. That was not my response. At all. That was not my response. It was, excuse me? What? Because during that, I looked like a dum-dum part of the time. Just to be honest. Because I totally missed things that I shouldn't have missed. The pastor of the church, I shouldn't have missed a lot of those things. But I did. But he said, nope, I need you to present it that way. So, we're about to start on the sermon, and I'm going to attempt to take you through the steps that God took me on. That's where we're going to go. That's how this sermon is going to go. So let's go. Creation. Just remember, I am an engineer by background, and you'll see how this plays out in the sermon. Creation. Genesis 1. We're actually going to read the creation story because that's what I did. And I think that's what God wants me to do. So we're going to read it. And my monitor is not on. Okay. I'll read it from my Bible. It's fine. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. And by the way, I read from the New King James Version, not the ESV. Sorry. I know most of you are probably ESV. But anyway. Then God said, let there be light. And there was light. And God saw the light, and that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. So the evening and the morning were the first day. Then God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. Thus God made the firmament, divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. So the evening and the morning were the second day. We're already into the second day. We're cruising right along here. And this is basically the way I was reading it. And there'll be a stopping point in just a second. Then God said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. Isn't that amazing? Actually, he just said, oh, wait a minute, I want some land. And there was some land. Okay? That's just but he didn't stop me there. That's not the point. And God called this dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb that yields seed, and the fruit tree that yields fruit according to its kind, whose seed is in itself on the earth. And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass, the herb that yields seed according to its kind, and the tree that yields fruit, whose seed is in itself according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. So the evening and the morning were the third day. We're almost there, the first stopping point. Then God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and seasons and for days and years, and let them be for lights in the firmament of the heavens to give light on the earth. And it was so. Then God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. And God stopped me on verse 16. So let's talk about that. So what is verse 16 talking about? Talking about the sun and the moon. That's basically what he's talking about. And so where did my mind go? Okay, God stopped me here because he wants me to describe the sun and the moon. So in my mind, I start going over these questions. Okay, how do I describe the sun and the moon? How big they are, how much they weigh, what their chemical composition. Remember, I'm an engineer. What their functions are, what do they do? And in the process of doing that, God asked me a question. Very simple question. He said, 4 words. What about the stars? Let's go back to that verse. You remember the last part of that verse? Because he's talking about the sun and the moon. What does it say? He made the stars also. As an afterthought, it sounds like, if you read that, he's going into detail about the sun and the moon and what they do, their function. And he said, oh yeah, by the way, I made the stars too. So I'm like, well, what? All you're saying is you just made the stars. Poof, I made some stars. And that was going through my mind, and then it hit me. You know what he did right there? He made the universe. He made it all. So, once I realized that, and remember, I'm taking you through the process I went through. As an engineer, can you imagine the questions that popped into my head? The thoughts that popped into my head? Well, how many stars are there? How many galaxies are there? How big is the universe? Those are the questions that popped into my head. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's how I'm going to be able to describe how powerful God is. I actually thought that. So what does any good engineer do once he's got a problem? He starts gathering data. That's what I did. I was like, how many stars did God make as an afterthought? Just remember that. He made the stars also. Like, oh, by the way, ho-hum, I made some stars. How many? And my C group Thursday asked if there was going to be any interactive part. This might be it. What galaxy do we live in? The Milky Way. We live in the Milky Way galaxy. One of the larger galaxies, not the largest, but one of the larger ones. Do you know how many stars are just in the Milky Way galaxy? Anybody have a clue? It's about 300 billion in our galaxy. They estimate 200 to 400 billion. They don't really know. So let's just go with 300 billion. 300 billion stars in our galaxy. Well, that's relatively impressive, I would say. Oh, I'm going to make some stars, and in just one galaxy, I'm going to put 300 billion of them. That's a big number. Big number. Do you know how many galaxies there are? Because that was my next question. I was like, God, that is really good. 300 billion stars just in our galaxy. Do you know how many galaxies there are? No, nobody does. The smartest people on Earth, astronomers and astrophysicists, don't really know. You know why they don't know? Because they can't see the end of the universe. They can't even see it. They estimate. Do you know how many they estimate? Now remember, our galaxy has 300 billion estimated stars. They estimate that there are 100, how many galaxies do you think? 1,000 galaxies? You think? In the universe. The viewable universe. We'll just go with that. 100,000. Good number. 1 million? Actually, they estimate 100 billion galaxies. Now, all those galaxies are not the size of ours. There's some that are really small, don't have many stars, probably 1 million. And there's some galaxies that are actually larger than ours. They estimate in the viewable universe 100 billion, with a B, galaxies. So, how many stars do you think that is? They really don't know, but they gave an estimate anyway. And that number is 70 billion trillion stars. That is a 7 with 22 zeros, people. 22. I was going to have them put it on the screen, but I don't think it would fit. I really don't. 70 billion trillion stars, that at the end of verse 16, God said, and I made the stars. Now, as an engineer, I felt pretty good about this. That's a good number. Can you imagine that number? Just as an aside. No. I can't even come close to imagine. That is 70 billion, which is a number that is, it's a huge number, 1 trillion times. Do you realize that? Can anybody comprehend that number? No. I don't think you can. So, I thought I'd nailed the stars, the number of stars. So now I was like, well, how big is the universe actually? That was my next question. Do you know they don't know that? We talk about, well, let's talk about the viewable universe. What does viewable universe mean? It means the universe that with the best technology that there has ever been in the history of mankind, as far as they can see or calculate seeing. They don't actually have to see it. They're so smart they can actually calculate seeing it. Do you know how they measure that distance of the universe? Do you know what unit they use? Called a light year. Buzz Lightyear, the movie Lightyear. That was kind of he's an astronaut. Anyway, light year. You know what the definition of a light year is? The definition of a light year in common layperson terms, that's not an astrophysicist, is the distance that light travels in 1 year. Light travels really fast. Really fast. You know what that distance is? And I'm going to round it off. Because there's an exact number that I'm just going to round it off. Light travels in 1 year roughly 5.88 trillion miles. That's a long way. I was gonna put up something that was said how many times you'd had to circle the Earth. I'm not even gonna do that. 5.8 trillion miles that light travels in a year. Do you know how many light years distance they estimate the universe is in every direction from Earth? I want you to think about that. In every direction from Earth, every possible direction, how big the universe is. How many light years? How many light years? Remember, 1 light year, that light travels 5.8 trillion miles. What'd you say?
750 million.
You're getting closer. You're getting better with your guesses. They estimate that the viewable universe is 92 billion light years in every direction from Earth. 92 billion light years in every direction from Earth. Do you know how many miles that is? I did it. I'm an engineer, remember? Now, I had to break out a special calculator to actually get that number. It is 500, roughly, 500 billion trillion miles in every single direction from planet Earth. And that's not the end of the universe. They know they can't see it all. They admit they can't see it all. You know how much they estimate that, what they estimate the actual size of the universe, even though they have no clue. They don't have a clue. They estimate it's 250 times bigger than that. But you know how they explain how they can't see the end of it? Is that it's still growing. No, they just can't see it. They just can't see the end of it. You know why they can't see the end of it? In my non-expert opinion, because there is no end. I don't think there's an end to the universe. I really don't. That's not biblical. That's my thought. But I think that's why they can't see the end of it. So, at this point, I think I have a really good argument for the stars and the universe that can convince you how powerful God is. Remember, I'm trying to convince you how powerful God is. So, I go back. And I go back to the creation story. And I start reading that. And I won't go through. I'll just skip to next verse where he stopped me. And that was verse 27. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female. He created them. And God stopped me. And actually, he didn't even have me go back to the creation story and read any more of it, which is right next to me. So, after everything I just went through with the universe and the stars and all that, what do you think my thought was when God stopped me on verse 27 in the creation of man? You think I was impressed? I wasn't. Actually, to be honest, I really wasn't. Because I'm thinking, I actually said this. God, is that even close to as impressive as the universe? What do you think God said? He said nothing, actually. I got crickets, nothing. And I asked twice. And so my thought was, well, he stopped me on verse 27 for a reason, obviously. I'm going to go get data. I'm an engineer. I'm going to go get data. So I did. You know how many bones that are in the human body at birth? Now, some nurses and some in the medical field may know some of these answers. 270, roughly. Do you know how many you have as an adult? Now, this actually was amazing to me. I never thought of this. You know how many you have once you are an adult, mature adult, somewhere, some of us mature a lot differently than others. 210. I'm like, well, how is that possible? Well, a lot of those bones combine as we mature. From baby to 40-year-old, I'm older than that, 47. Some of those bones combine, roughly 60 of them combine into us only having 210 bones in our body. That actually got my attention. I was like, wow, God, that is impressive. So I kept going. Another interactive part. How many miles of blood vessels do you think are in the human body? Now, I didn't think it was many. I'm going to be honest. I'm not in the medical field, never even thought about being in the medical field. How many miles of blood vessels do you think there are in the human body? 96. Okay. That's a big number. In my mind, that was a big number. That was bigger than my number. I thought like 30, 40, maybe. Would anybody guess, 5,000? Would anybody guess that? Anybody? Would anybody guess 5,000? Okay, got one. Okay, maybe a couple. How about 10,000? Would anybody guess that? I got no's. How about 20? 20,000 miles. Would anybody guess that? 30. I'm going to keep going. Would anybody guess 50,000 miles? I've been out since 50. I've been way out. 60,000 miles. I thought it was wrong because I'd looked it up on a reputable. I said, that's impossible. It cannot be right. I found it in 4 different places. And they all said 60,000 miles of blood vessels in the human body. So either all 4 of these reputable websites, I know it's the internet, okay? I get it. The internet is not always right. But these are 4 reputable sites, and they all had the same number. I'm going to believe it. It's 60,000 miles of blood vessels in the human body. That absolutely blew my mind. Okay, the creation of man and woman just got way more interesting to me. Okay, not done yet. Not done yet. How many nerve cells do you think there are in the human body? Now they're really small. Again, okay? Just think about that. I'm not going to let you guess. Because again, I was so far off. Just 100 billion nerve cells in every human body. You know where 85% of them are? Your brain. 85 billion nerve cells in your brain. That's crazy. Little, but that's amazing. Last one for the human body, which I totally had me convinced that I nailed it. How many chemical reactions take place in your human body every second? You're like, oh, I mean, and literally, this was the number that I came up with. 1,000. 1,000 chemical reactions in your body. That was my number now. That was my number. I was slightly off. Do you remember those numbers that we talked about for the number of stars? Yeah. How about 37 trillion billion chemical reactions occur in your body every second of every day of your life? You're like, how is that possible? Cells are really small, and there's a lot of them, and every single one of them are a chemical reaction is taking place in every second of your life. Isn't that amazing? Now, the creation of the human body just got real. That is huge. That's why God stopped me there. It was all of a sudden just as impressive as the universe to me. And I'm an engineer, so it takes a lot to impress me when it comes to numbers. Now, that number I just gave you for chemical reactions in your body every second isn't even right. And the experts admit it's not right. You know why they admit it's not right? Actually, I read this in 3 different places on the internet. Reputable sources. Because the human body is too complicated for them to even have a good guess. They actually said that. The human body is so complicated, that is a guess that is probably not even in the ballpark. Those people are pretty smart too. Probably some of the smartest people on earth. And they don't know. Now, me, I was focused on the numbers. And at this point, I thought I'd killed it. Really, this is impressive. Okay, you created a galaxy, or a universe, with, what was it, 70 billion trillion stars in it, just as an afterthought. And he made the stars also. And then he created a human body where there's so many chemical reactions in it that the smartest people that have ever lived on earth can't tell me how many it is. That's pretty impressive. God, that is a show of power. That is a big God. Would you agree? I did too. So you know what I did at this point? In my mind, I had what I needed to be able to convince someone how big God was. I did. I nailed it. I had it. I was actually, and this is hilarious, I was actually thinking about, what am I going to do for an invitation to tie this together? This is going to change somebody's life. That was my thought. And you know what happened? You got to know, at this point you got to know what happened, right? God asked me a question. This is the part where he actually taught me something. And his question was, and I actually have this written down, I don't want to miss it. So, Are you convinced you have described how big and powerful I am so that people will get it? That they will be able to picture it in their minds. That was the question. Actually a long question. Usually his questions are really short. Now, I was actually smart enough to know at this point, God usually doesn't ask me questions to confirm when I've learned something or when I've got it. So what do you think I did? I panicked. Because I knew at that point what the answer was. So I went back and I read over, because I was typing this up on the computer as I went. I went back and read over all of it. And it was really impressive. To me, it was really impressive. Do you know what my answer was? No, it was. My answer was, after reading back over everything, it was like, God, I don't think it's enough. I really don't think it is. As impressive as all that is, I really don't think that's enough to convince them how powerful and big you are. And of course, upon admitting that, there was some nervousness there. So what did I start to do? I actually started to question them. I started to question everything then. I mean, I'd been so sure of what God had given me and why He'd given it to me and what it was supposed to do, and now I wasn't. Because I knew it wasn't enough. So, God, I need better words. I need bigger words. I mean, there's got to be words that can describe it to where people get it. There's got to be. I need a better example. Really? I mean, I actually said that. I need better examples. After those two examples, but that's what I said. It's got to need better examples. I took it farther. God, I need to be a better speaker. There's no way I can communicate this. Obviously, when you ask me that question, I'm not good enough to do it. I kept going. He hadn't stopped me yet. I said, and I actually wrote this down. God, I think you should have given it to Andy Stanley or Francis Chant or John Piper, which are three of the great pastors of our time. They can communicate this. If you'd given those guys the information you gave me, they could do it. And finally God spoke. You know what He said? He said 3 words. No, they couldn't. I had to step back. Because these are 3 guys. We've done studies in our small groups with all 3 of these guys. Are they phenomenal? I'll say yes. So I started defending those guys because He said they couldn't do it. I said, no, God. Those guys are phenomenal. Pastors and speakers and communicators. If you had given them what you gave me, no doubt in my mind they could do it. I actually said at one point, they're 1,000 times better than me at this. And that's probably an underestimation. Because I've underestimated every other number I've given you, remember? And I just kept, along those lines, I just kept pushing it along and along. And finally, you know what God said? I'm defending these 3 guys. He said, no, they couldn't. That's all He said. 3 more words, same 3 words. Now I am really at a loss, to be honest. Because I'm like, okay, wait a minute. There was for a few minutes, I couldn't even have a coherent thought, to be honest. Because I'm like, and of course, once I got a coherent thought, you know what my first thought was? Okay, I've spent 3 days, 4 days, I don't remember exactly how long it was at that time, working on a sermon that you gave me that won't work. No panic there, right? And then, of course, the questions went, okay, I was so sure of what you had given me. How did I miss it? Because obviously it's me. I mean, because God is perfect. God doesn't miss it. How did I miss it? Now, of course, then I really started getting down, well, you're an idiot. How did you miss it? I mean, I thought it was so clear. And just going along those questions. And of course, and then I, of course, threw in my buddies, Andy Stanley and Francis Chan and John Piper in there in my frantic debate with God, because it's kind of what it was. After he had let me wallow in that for a while, because I was like, God, I have no clue. If this isn't it, I don't know what the sermon is. I really don't. And that's when he taught me something. He actually said, I typed it up, because I don't want to miss it. Those guys can't totally understand me and describe me. You can't understand me and describe me. Because no one can. No one can totally understand me and describe me. There are no words. He actually told me that. I can't give